The other thing that's sort of rolling around in the congregation system is this idea of myths, stories. This is the way we've always done it. You know, oh, why did you put that table there? Oh, no, that table goes over here. And these are just these unwritten little rules that if you are new to the system or if you're new in your role, maybe you've been with the congregation for 10 years and you got hired as a religious educator. Well, there were a lot of little norms related to the work of the religious educator that you were blissfully unaware of. And now all of a sudden you've been around a long time, so everybody expects, oh, you know all those things. You know where the attic is, right? You know where the Christmas decorations are. You know where the holiday costumes are. And this is tied into expectations. The myths are interesting because this is the story that we tell about ourselves. And the biggest myth that I often experience in congregation, it's a little simplistic, but it's a big one, is this idea that we really support religious education. We are really committed to religious education. And then you look at the practice, you look at the reality of how that commitment is manifest in a congregation, and you see that they have, a half-time religious educator with 80 kids, which is not enough work hours. The religious educator doesn't have professional expense money to go off to the Laredo Fall Conference and deepen their connection and deepen their expertise. So we say one thing, but maybe we act differently. So being aware of all of these things can help us to really be to create a partnership that's a little bit more transparent, and also to be willing to question and say, well, gosh, I know that we've always done it that way, but let's really talk about this. Let's really think about this. Does it make sense anymore? That was when we were something different, or we had different resources, or we had different leadership. So all of that connects to communication. Communication is really key, and I would say that for many congregations, this is a difficult struggle. We put it in the newsletter. We try to get information out about things that are going on. Communication between different committees can be challenging. Communication of goals and mission-focused tasks can, like the old game of telephone, from the time it leaves the boardroom to the time it gets down to the folks who are doing the work, can get confused. So communication, direct communication, as much as possible. Avoid that triangle, the triangulated conversations. Some of this is, again, from the Healthy Congregations training, that some little snippets of things related to how to communicate in a healthy way. One is that we're truth-telling, that we're going to be transparent about the work that we're doing, and we're going to be transparent with one another about our expectations. And part of truth-telling is back to clarity. There's a willingness to talk about difficult issues, and we all have those difficult issues. That's just part of, I think that's another part of church life that's totally inherent. But we stay at the table. We work them through. Sometimes our emotions get involved, and sometimes they get the better of us, but we're willing to return. And we'll talk a little later about covenant. Understanding where you begin, where I end, where you begin, what are our boundaries, both our personal boundaries and our professional and lay leadership boundaries. And this is why clarity is helpful. Knowing that I understand my boundaries in terms of, say, delegation of work, or understanding what kind of communication you prefer. If I know that you prefer to communicate by phone and I consistently email you, that's an unhealthy way of being in a relationship, and an unhealthy way of trying to communicate. and confidentiality. And this is hard. This can be hard. And the metaphorical partnership of friends, of SpongeBob and Patrick, that you're friends. And so at some point, you have to decide, are you friends first or are you a religious educator and a volunteer first? And the rules around confidentiality are very different for those two sets of relationships. And particularly if you're hired out of a congregation, you find yourself often at a crossroads where you really have to choose. And confidentiality really is more important. And sometimes that will impact our personal relationships in a way that can be painful and upsetting, but you have taken on this, you have this sacred trust as the religious educator, the whole confidentiality. And that also happens, by the way, in the family, the kind of the Walton picture, where you may hear things about people that people just think they should tell you because you're kind of the maternal leader of the congregation, that are really inappropriate for them to be telling you. So that unhealthy confidentiality can go both ways. So we have some problematic communication issues, rumors, of course, gossip, the parking lot conversation, and these things do happen in congregations. People often bring their full emotional self to church, as opposed to perhaps working in an office environment or in a professional environment where they have to kind of sublimate their emotions and really let that the practical, professional side of them show through. And so when those emotions are leading, sometimes we're just not guarded about the things that we say. And sometimes gossip comes out of deep concern. Did you hear about somebody so-and-so? Or so-and-so lit a candle. I wonder what that could mean. And, so gossip is not always ill-intentioned, but it comes out of, it's crossing a boundary. It is crossing a boundary. And as a professional, you have to really be careful about that, and you have to be careful about that in your committee religious educator relationship. When do you cross the line as a group between sort of talking about perhaps a challenge in a classroom, and when do you cross the line into maybe what might be inappropriate exposure or leaking information that was meant to be held confident. So we just have to awareness of these things is always a good idea. We all have it, Some of us have stampedes. Some of us have, little baby elephants, and then just one big giant grandfather elephant. But every congregation has that issue that's hard to talk about. It could be money. It could be an aging facility. It could be difficulty, personality conflicts. It could be and often it can be theological conflicts in the congregation. And so, this is one thing that a healthy RE committee and a healthy religious educator relationship will be able to do, and that is to have those difficult conversations and have the courage and the trust to uncover the elephant, or whatever the issues are that are challenging.